Value is one of the most important things you need to get right when making art. Now, I don't want to make a whole tier list of, oh, perspective is more important than value or color or anything like that, but what I will say is that out of all the things that you can learn in art, all of them boil down into something I call 7 main art fundamentals. And value is one of those ones that I don't see getting talked about nearly as much as it should, because it's pretty much the cornerstone of any art piece or graphic design that you see. The second I start to add color or light in any piece, the first thing I'm thinking about is how the values look like, and I don't think many inexperienced artists are thinking in the same vein. So that's why I'm here talking to you in this weird avatar without a mouth through this video that I'm assuming you clicked on because you want to get better at art. So without further ado, let's take a closer look into the world of values and how painting in black and white can actually be the easiest way to improve your colors. So what is this thing we call value? Well, the definition is quite simple. It's the lightness or darkness of a color, but in execution, that's where things get much deeper. With the first aspect being contrast. Value contrast always comes before color contrast. But what does this mean? Well, let's take for example this piece that I made quite recently. This is one of the highest contrasting pieces that I've made in quite a while when it comes to color, as you can clearly see from the bright oranges and yellows that stand out from the purples and pinks. But separating this piece into the values and colors, you can really start to see where the actual source of this contrast comes from. It's mostly the values that make it stand out, not really the colors. And to prove this point, I'm going to lower the contrast only in the value portion of the painting and put the same high contrast colors back in. And with that, the piece is pretty much ruined. But if I do this and vice versa and only change the colors, it doesn't really mess with it too much. And so if even in a piece like this, where the color contrast is extremely high and one of the focal points of the piece, and it still loses out to the values, I think you can imagine pretty much any piece with normal colors is pretty much completely dominated by the values in terms of contrast. But what else can values do? Working hand in hand with contrast, value is also a key contributor to the balance of any piece. Having a balance of lighter and darker values is key to achieving a good looking drawing. No matter what you're trying to create, you want to balance your values, and this happens before you even think about adding light to your art. Now, I'm pretty bad at saving my base colors, so I'm going to take another artist, say Daisuke Richardo. He's Japanese, but he has an English name, so I don't know which way to say it. He has a very minimalistic approach to art. As you can see, there's not much done here in terms of light. It's all pretty much one basic shading scheme separated by bright pastel. Oh my god, I can't speak. Pastel colors. So how does he make it look so good? Outside of the mastery in shape, line, and character design language, if we turn this into black and white, you can see how well he is at balancing his values. There's a very deliberate and well-balanced amount of bright gray, midtones, and blacks. Now, is there an exact amount of grays that I'm going to tell you to create? No, of course not. This all depends on the type of pieces that you're trying to create. What I will say is that you can't have none of them. The ratio of light to dark depends on you, but you have to find a way to include both light and dark values in your pieces, or else it will just be hard to read. And that's pretty much the kryptonite to all artists. If you mess up your values and don't get the contrast and balance right, your art will simply be hard to read and no one will understand it. This also isn't secluded in things like illustrations either. Concept art, character design, graphic design. Why do you think a lot of things like character model sheets don't include characters in shadow? I'll tell you, it's definitely not because they don't know how to shade these characters. It's because it's a lot more important to focus on the base colors and whether or not the values of these base colors look good together before moving on to anything else. Colors and value work hand in hand, but their relationship is not an equal one. Value is a lot more independent of colors, if I haven't driven that point home yet, while having good colors is a lot more dependent on whether or not the values underneath them look good. But there's a huge subject to value that I haven't talked about yet, which I'm guessing a lot of you guys are thinking about right now. Sure, base colors, balance, contrast, yada yada yada, but what about when we add light is value, but value is not light. I go over the specifics of light in a previous video, but I want to correct something I said in the beginning. I said that light is an art fundamental, and while in the general sense that is kind of correct, I want to get technical. So I would consider light not to be a main fundamental art. I would consider it to be a branch off from values, and I would consider value to be that one main fundamental out of the 7 instead. It's a lot like that whole squares and rectangle scenario, where if I talk about light, it will always be also about value, but the entire previous section of this video wasn't really about light now, was it? Now, I don't want this section of the video to just be a repeat of a previous one, but I also don't want to leave a lot of people who haven't seen that one hanging, so let's go through a TLDR of light in the context of values. Starting with source light, it's, well, the source of your light, so anything closest to it will be the value of that light. Keyword value. If the source light is a darker gray, don't light your character with white. You want to match that lighting. Ambient light is a light of the environment affecting your object or character, basically meaning that if you want your character to look like it exists in a place, their values need to match that place. Bounce light is when light from the source light hits something and then bounces off and creates another light source. So basically, if the opposite side of a character or object is facing away from the light but is near something else, make the values match that thing that is facing. And finally, we have rim light. What do you do when there's a light that is covered or behind something? You brighten the edges of that thing to match the light, creating a rim of light. And there we go. These are all very simplified explanations, and only in the context of value as well is the topic of this video. If you want to know more about how light works in color and in a lot more depth, go check out the previous one. I think I do a pretty good job of explaining it, if I do say so myself. One thing I didn't touch on, however, is how light and value affect texture, and that's something that I want to deep dive into right now. Value is the originator of texture. Without value or light, you would basically have none outside of what you can create by, say, hatching, although technically that would count as a shadow, which then would technically count as a light, so I guess it wouldn't, but who cares? Let's talk about texture. If you want to change the texture of something, you must change the way value interacts with that thing. Let's take something that's matte and something that's metal, for example. Matte is quite simple. There's a bit of light and shadow from the source light, but other than that, it really likes to stick with the base value that it is assigned. But metal is much different. I like to think of metal as an exaggeration of the things around it, so the things that are in the environment get reflected just like a mirror curving around the form of the shape, and now you copy the values onto that object rather than sticking with a base as you would with the matte objects. And as you can clearly see, changing up the way that you put down value will drastically change the material you're creating. In this example, I chose two extremes, metal and matte, but there are a lot of subtle changes, like between clothes to skin to even hair material, that even I cannot fully wrap my head around every single one just yet. So experimenting and finding examples that match what you want to create is key. So by now, I hope you understand just how important value is and why I consider it to be one of the 7 main art fundamentals, pretty much up there with S-tier fundamentals that you need to learn right now, like perspective and form. So how do you improve it? The first thing that I'm not going to ask you to do, but I'm telling you to do, is to create a grayscale layer. To do this, just make a layer, set it to color, and fill it with black, and boom, you can freely turn your drawing in black and white. If you're doing this traditionally, just take a picture and then put on a grayscale filter. Seriously, write this down or something and do it every time you make a painting. If something ever feels off, like if the color doesn't look right or you're not sure if the light is too bright, zoom out, turn on the grayscale filter, and make sure the values look right. I cannot stress this enough. This has saved me countless times, even to this day. Even in this painting, there were 2 times where I felt like something is off, made it black and white, and it fixed a key problem. Trust me, this is a lifesaver. Outside of that, the quickest way to level up your value game is to study from life. Nothing beats a good old life study in this department. I mean, what better way to make sure your values look more lifelike than to paint real life? You don't even need to do it in black and white either. Just try copying what you see without color picking the reference. Still can't believe some people do that. You know what? No, I'm gonna rant about this right now because I cannot believe some people think it's okay to color pick from reference while you're painting it. Like, I get wanting to check after the fact, but like during, like during, I mean, it's defeating the whole purpose of the study in the first place. You're doing this to learn to get good at your observation and guesstimating the colors without the this is so backwards. Okay, back to what we're doing. Practicing values. So other than studies, I would say analyzing other people's and your own works, turning them black and white and cross-referencing and seeing why their values work and yours doesn't work as much. Diversifying your work and doing specific lighting scenario studies are things that can help. Value isn't really something that you can really isolate and study all on its own unless you're really like doing a lot of black and white studies or something like that. It's a lot like perspective in a sense where you can practice this one thing and get really good at this one lighting scenario or perspective, but once you need to draw something from a different direction of light or angle, everything gets thrown out the window. It's mostly about the long game and practicing a lot of little things and doing studies and more studies and more studies and scenarios that will help contribute to getting good at the big thing that we call values. And I want this video to be like a public service announcement to less experienced artists or just kind of remote remind more experienced ones on just how important it is to get your values right. But that's it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Sub so I can feed the family if the family counts as my massive ego, and yet I stay so humble. Honestly, how do I do it? I'm giving out all of this frankly amazing art advice for free. I mean, at this point, I think AI should fear me because I'm raising some art babies that are going to be